Any preliminary remarks? Or?
Oh, I'm supposed to. Could you state your name? Let me ask you, Danny, how long have you been a member of Texas Criminal Defense Lawyers?
I think I've been a member since about 1988.
And how long have you been practicing law?
In November of this year, I completed my 30th year.
Now, you started out with the District Attorney's Office, didn't you?
That's right. In May of 1978, I went to work for the Lubbock County Criminal District Attorney's Office. Worked there for 20 months.
And how long did you work there? 20 months. So when would that have been that you got out?
I stopped in March of 1980. Started May 78, March to 1980, yes.
Okay, so what type of law were you practicing then?
In the DA's office or after?
After.
I started off in pretty much a general practice. My dad was a lawyer in Lubbock, and he and his partner, Madison Souder, had a long time partnership. So I started off doing a little bit of everything. And seems like the persons accused of crimes increased while other types of law practice decreased.
Was Texas Criminal Defense Lawyers, I mean, was it real active in Lubbock prior to, say, in the middle 80s?
Well, it was active. I would have to say I didn't know nearly as many people involved in TCDLA until there was an organization started, the Lubbock Criminal Defense Lawyers Association.
Do you remember what year that was?
Seems like it was about 1980, but I'm not positive about that.
I know Cliff Brown got me involved in Texas Criminal Defense Lawyers. Who got you involved?
Well, I'd have to say that Bill Wishkemper got me involved in Texas Criminal Defense Lawyers. I knew quite a few lawyers from other aspects of my life, like Tim Evans. We were acquainted because I was roommates with one of his best friends' little brother, and so I met Tim. I think I met Tim in a bar at London Hall about 1973 or 4, and so Tim Evans and Bill Wishkemper were the ones that encouraged me to get involved in TCDLA.
You always want to be a criminal defense lawyer?
You know, at first, I went to law school thinking I would be an estate planning and tax lawyer, and I quickly learned that I was not going to be a tax lawyer. And but getting to meet Bill through working at the DA's office and meeting a lot of the people involved in TCDLA, I decided I was much more suited for the practice of criminal law from the defense side than the prosecution side.
By the way, we're supposed to get your background. Where did you go to law school?
I went to Texas Tech undergrad and Texas Tech Law School. Got out in 1978.
What's your family consist of?
Well, I have 2 children from a prior marriage who were 29 and 26, ski bums in Colorado. And I have a 12-year-old son from my present marriage to Ginger.
And he's going to be a professional wrestler?
I hope he's going to get a big contract with the NFL so I can retire one of these days.
He is 5'10".
He's about 5'11", about 195 right now.
At 12 years old.
Yeah, at 12 years old. Wears a size 13 shoe.
What firm are you in now? How many lawyers?
Today, David Gwynn and I are partners here in Lubbock, and we have been since 2000, and we have 2 associates working with us.
And You were president of the Texas Criminal Defense Lawyers in what year?
2005 was my term.
And what are some of the things you've done in TCDLA as far as being seminars, things like that?
Well, of course, everybody who becomes an officer in TCDLA spends a lot of time being presenters at the seminars, and I've done a lot of that, being involved in many committees. The one that I enjoyed most was the Strike Force Committee, representing and helping lawyers who were in a little bit of trouble because of their zealous representation of their clients.
I have represented you on the strike force before. Could you tell us some of the cases you represented on the strike force?
Well, let me see. Nearly everything. I can't recall any strike force case that we didn't get resolved prior to contempt hearings, unlike my own. Most of the strike force cases that I was involved in, we reached an agreement prior to going to hearing. Unfortunately, the one you're referring to, where Bob Hinton and you had to assist me, was one that we had to go all the way through the hearing.
I think there was one in La Mesa where we didn't have to go through.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, there was another one in La Mesa that I've forgotten about, where we made a contribution to the Cancer Society, as I recall. And I didn't have to go to jail in that one either.
Tell me the difference in practicing law today and back in the 1980s.
You know, Bill, it's changed a lot, and gosh, I've heard old lawyers around my dad say that forever. You know, had to walk 2 miles to school in the snow uphill both ways, but I really think the practice of law has changed considerably from the way it was in 78 and 80, and it seems like things are just way too serious, far more serious than they used to be. We used to try cases 3 and 4 a week, and as soon as we'd get done, the defense lawyers and the prosecutors would go have a cocktail or two, and there was always camaraderie, even though we were in the heat of battle during the trials. And you don't see that now. Seems that the prosecutors and the defense lawyers don't get along like they once did.
Seems like it's not as much fun practicing law anymore.
Yeah, it's just way too serious. We had a lot of fun back then. We seemed to find a way to find humor, and nearly everything we did had lots of experiences where we would have practical jokes that we'd play on each other and things such as that. Doesn't happen anymore.
Tell us some of the big cases that you remember trying.
I would have to say the case that I'll remember the most was the case I had in Bailey County. Had a young man named Joseph Carpenter who was charged with capital murder. He was accused of brutally beating and raping a neighbor, a Hispanic lady. And unfortunately, Joseph confessed twice to the crime. And his mother called me and basically said, you know, I want your help, but all I can afford to pay is $5,000. And like an idiot, she kind of tugged at my heartstrings, and so I decided to represent her son. And after getting into the case and finding out why he confessed, I realized that he had given false confessions. And I started looking through some of the TCDLA material that had been gathered and found some articles that Jerry Morris from Austin had put together, and led me to a guy named Richard Offshee, who was a professor in Berkeley, California, and I wrote him a letter and said, listen, I got this case, I don't have any money, but I got this guy who's confessed twice to this terrible murder, and I don't think he did it. And Offshee decided to help, and we got some assistance from the court, and Offshee kind of directed me on a way to do that, and I think he ended up getting paid $40,000 on the case. I got $5,000, but the jury found my client not guilty, and the judge was so displeased with the verdict and what he described as my conduct that he held me in contempt and set the case for a trial after a contempt trial on me. And so Bob Hinton and about 6 or 7 other lawyers from Lubbock, including Bill, assisted me in that trial, and we were able to work it out such that after we put on all the testimony, the judge withdrew the contempt complaint, and we walked away from that case without me having to go to jail.
I think the jury made some comment about the judge in that hearing, did they not?
Yeah, the allegation was that I had imputed bias to the judge by my comments during the trial. That was the complaint that they were trying to put me in jail over, and we interviewed several of the jurors and told them that the judge said that I had implied that he was biased, and all of the jurors that we interviewed said, well, there's no way you could have done that. He was biased. We had several of them testify that the judge showed his bias throughout the trial, and they thought it was a completely, totally unfair way of running a trial, and so that's one time where the judge's conduct helped us.
What's one of the funniest cases you've ever been in?
Well, we were talking a little earlier, Bill, about an aggravated sexual assault trial that I tried in Matador, and that's cowboy country. That's a very conservative part of the state.
Population maybe 1,200 in the county.
If it's that big, most everybody, comes to court or to the courthouse in a pickup and with their saddle in the back. And I was representing a young man, a rancher, who was a new neighbor in Matador, Motley County. And he was accused by a 12-year-old girl of aggravated sexual assault. And so we tried the case for a week, and as the jury went out, a lady approached me and said, can I talk to you a little bit? And I said, well, yeah, sure. And so she takes me back to her room and says, I want you to know that I appreciate what you've done. I just don't see how anybody could ever believe that young girl, and I just can't believe that the prosecutor would even take this case. And I said, well, ma'am, why do you feel that way? And she said, well, that girl has accused my son of the same thing. And so my jaw dropped, and I went, oh my God, and are you saying that the prosecutor knows this? Oh yeah, he knows this. And are you saying that this is information that has been kept from me that I should have known? And she said, well, I don't know about that, but maybe we don't need to raise a big stink about it anyway. And I said, well, this could mean my client didn't get a fair trial. And she said, well, I think it's going to be okay. And I said, well, ma'am, why do you feel that way? And she says, well, my husband's on the jury. And he turned out to be the foreman of the jury. And so my need to take an affidavit of that lady ended pretty quickly. And I decided maybe she was right. Maybe we just needed to be quiet and wait and see what happened. And not long thereafter, there was a knock on the door with the not guilty verdict that she predicted was going to happen.
Any other funny ones? Seemed like I was going through my scrapbook, and we just don't have the funny trials now that we used to have back then.
Well, gosh, we had so many back then, and I can't think of any one that, there were a lot of them that were funny, and but I can't think of one that's in particular that would be of interest.
I remember one time when you were DA, you tried a speeding case, I think, in front of Blaylock.
Yeah, I did, when I think it was either my first or second jury trial in front of Judge Blaylock here in Lubbock, who was a legend. And the defendant was pro se, and he got on the witness stand and confessed to speeding, but said he didn't intend to do it, and being the brilliant, fresh out of law school prosecutor that I was, I knew that his intent didn't matter, so I made a motion for an instructed verdict of guilt, and Judge Blaylock hit the gavel down and said, "I find you guilty," and Mr. Hurley, I was waiting for you to do that. And then when I got back to the DA's office and told everybody what had happened, needless to say, I was the butt of the jokes for a long time.
Well, how many cases a year, jury trials, do you try then?
Oh, I would say that I averaged 10 to 12 jury trials a year. Seems like lately I've been trying more than that. Most of them are serious.
And some of them are, well, I meant to ask you on the capital murder case in Bailey County, how long were you in trial on that?
We actually, because the state waived the death penalty on the Friday before the trial started, we did not have individual jury selection. So I think we tried that case in about 2.5 weeks.
So how many murder cases have you tried, let's say, in the last 12 months? I know you tried one in Post.
Yeah, just a couple, I think, in the last year. I've tried, seems like we try a lot of intox assaults and manslaughters lately, things such as that.
You've been involved in one high-profile case here where an assistant DA, an ex-assistant DA was run over. Tell us about that one.
You're talking about the Long case?
Right.
It was not an assistant DA, the DA's administrative assistant.
Right.
Yeah, we tried that case for a couple of weeks. That resulted in a guilty verdict and a 2-year prison sentence for a 62-year-old lady that we were able to get reversed on appeal, and now we're about to have to try it again. Bill, one of the things that I wanted to talk about just a little bit was, we discussed why we got involved in TCDLA. And in the 90s, we had a prosecutor in Lubbock named Travis Ware that the Texas Country Reporter called the singing DA. I really think Travis wanted to go to Hollywood and become an actor or country singer more than he wanted to be DA, but he was very ambitious. And he used a pathologist by the name of Ralph Erdman, who had a pretty strong German accent and always came to court in his Marine Reserve uniform with all of his medals and ribbons and badges. And he would testify, and essentially he would, whatever theory Travis wanted him to testify to was fine with him. And we all believed that Dr. Erdman was not a person that could be trusted, and it was discovered later on that he really wasn't even doing the autopsies, that he had been so overburdened that he wasn't even doing the normal Y incision, that after exhumation of several bodies they found that there had been no autopsy performed
I think they
at all.
called it drive-by.
Yeah, a drive-by autopsy, yeah, that's what it was called. And so 2 police officers in Lubbock that didn't have the best reputations were subpoenaed by Millard Farmer to testify in a capital murder case in Canyon, and they basically said that Erdman couldn't be trusted, that he was a dishonest person, and that it was that his reputation for truth and veracity was bad. And Travis Ware decided to indict the 2 police officers for some sort of obstruction of justice that occurred years prior. Randy Sherrod, the DA in Canyon, also decided that he would indict the lawyer Millard Farmer from Atlanta, Georgia, for tampering with witnesses. And basically the message was, how dare you criticize our expert witness? And Bill Hubbard came to me and asked me to represent him. I remember, Bill, you calling me up saying, you know, Danny, I think that was it was in the early 90s. He says, we think you need a little help on this case, and we're going to suggest a lawyer from San Antonio, you might not have heard of him, his name is Jerry Goldstein, to assist you. And so I was a little jealous of, I thought this was going to be my career case, but I agreed to allow Jerry and Cynthia Orr and Skadden Arps from New York and Jed Stone from Chicago and several other Lubbock lawyers, Charlie Dunn, Brian Murray. We all formed a team, and we filed a RICO lawsuit against Travis Ware and Randy Sherrod. And we filed the case, and the federal judge, Judge Mary Lou Robinson, told us she would give us 4 hours to try the case on the injunction part. We were seeking to have a state prosecution enjoined because of the violation of our client's constitutional rights to free speech and assistance of counsel. And so we went to Amarillo in January of '92 in a driving blizzard, and I believe about a week later we were sent home, and about a month later Judge Robinson granted our injunction enjoining the prosecution, indicating that there had been substantial evidence of malfeasance on the part of the district attorneys in filing those cases. We ended up settling the cases on our civil rights claim, and our clients ended up getting about $300,000. That was my first experience of the power of the networking and of the importance of lawyers like Jerry Goldstein and your contact with those lawyers, and it really prevented a terrible injustice from occurring. Those 2 DAs both got defeated in the next election, and that was a pretty significant period of time here in West Texas.
I can remember when that case was put together. It was put together at Rosario's after a meeting there in San Antonio.
Yeah.
And Goldstein just said, you will do this,
Yeah.
this, and he followed through with it and would not take any money.
That's true. Jerry and Cynthia Skadden-Arps, one of the biggest law firms in the United States and out of New York City, did all of this work pro bono, and several of the firms didn't even get back their expenses. So they not only donated their time, they donated their money to righting that wrong.
And I think you did pro bono.
Yeah, I didn't get any compensation. I got part of my expenses back, which was sorely needed at that time.
I've got to talk about one case. I was sitting in watching you try one time, and all I remember is the guy tried to stab somebody inside the house. They took the knife away from him, and he went back outside and did stab the guy, and you got him not guilty.
Yeah.
You've had some tremendous verdicts.
I've been, after hearing Craig Washington today, I've always said that I've been awfully lucky, but it's possible that Craig's right. Maybe I was blessed by somebody in some of these cases, because yeah, there was a few of those cases where I can recall my defense was that my clients really didn't intend to stab this fellow, that he probably got all those wounds when he fell through a glass coffee table inside the house. And so I asked the physician, I did the right thing, I made an appointment with the physician, the treating physician, and said, now, Doc, isn't it possible that some of those injuries were caused by him falling through this plate glass window inside the house? And the doctor said, not even close, not remotely possible. So I knew the question I was not going to ask him during the trial. And so that question was not asked, and the jury decided that the state had not proven that those injuries weren't caused from that glass coffee table, and we got not guilty.
You and I tried one here a while back. You did all the work on it, but that was pretty amazing.
Well, I sure didn't do all the work, but we had a young man who's he's kind of like Stu Kynard. He's a whole long way from being perfect. He's been to the federal pen 2 or 3 times and has about 8 pending felonies, and he was charged with a DWI where he flipped his Ford F-250 and landed upside down in a bar ditch, and his 5-year-old daughter had to unstrap him after crawling back in the vehicle from the rooftop, and saved him, and so they charged him with endangering a child and DWI, and for some reason they chose to try the DWI first. And we were calling witnesses during the punishment phase to try to show that he did have some redeeming value, and his ex-wife got on the witness stand and testified that at least with the conviction she could make sure that from now on, anytime he wanted to see that daughter of his, that he was going to have to come to Clovis, New Mexico, and exercise visitation inside her living room. And that's the only way he was going to get it. And so we argued in punishment that that was enough punishment to have to go to that woman's house to visit his own child. And the jury came back with 14 days in jail, which we were very pleased with.
Tell us about your case in Midland, Odessa, where you were representing a coach.
Yeah, that was another case that I have to say that my client was very lucky. He was a African American girls basketball coach that had been accused of improper touching of his students in 3 jurisdictions: in Albuquerque, New Mexico, in Lubbock, and in Midland. And the Midland case seemed to be the strongest, so we tried that case, and we had a questionnaire. And in the questionnaire, the judge handed it out to the jury on Monday, gave it to us, we read it and studied it Monday night, and then began jury selection on Tuesday morning at 9. And I have to believe that we did a better job of studying the questionnaire, because several people got on the jury that probably shouldn't have. One that indicated that his son was in prison at the time for sexual assault of a child. One who indicated that he, in his spare time, ran a bipolar support group. And then, but probably the funniest thing that occurred is right before the jury was to begin deliberation, one of the jurors started raising his hand, getting the judge's attention, and the judge just kind of looked at him like, oh no, we've gone this far and something's happened. So the juror approached the bench, and the juror said to the judge, "Judge, when we go into that jury room, you're not going to lock that door, are you?" And the judge looked at him and said, "Oh no, sir, we won't lock the door." And so the jury retired. Ends up he's the foreman, sent out several notes, and they came back on a not guilty verdict, and we were all very surprised by that verdict.
Tell us about the coach from Plainview that you represented on capital murder.
Yeah, that was, you talk about a trial that took a while. That trial started in September, early September, and ended on December 12th. John David Weatherwood was accused of murdering his former girlfriend's fiance, and it was a long fought trial. He was convicted, given a life sentence. We got it reversed on appeal, tried it again. It was reversed on appeal again. Then Sharon Keller at the Court of Criminal Appeals reversed the Court of Appeals. The Court of Appeals was ordered to consider the case again in light of some new decisions. They reversed it again. Sharon Keller reversed them again, and I think there were 6 appellate decisions on that case. The irony in that case was my client was accused of shooting the gentleman in the back of the head and killing him in his girlfriend's living room. Of course, there were no witnesses. And 2 years after the final appellate decision affirming his capital murder conviction, he died in prison of an aneurysm in the almost identical spot to the person who was the victim in that case.
I'm sure there's some more I hadn't thought about.
I think that's plenty. Let me see if there's anything else. The one issue about Mark Daniel has suggested that if there was a question of how you would want to be remembered, I would say that I would want, if there was one lasting memory that I would want to have about TCDLA and my representation of the citizen accused, is that while money has been important and it has helped me have a good life and my family have a good life. I think the one lasting memory I would want to have is I always tried to put the interests of my client at the top, and I always tried to do what was best for them in their representation. Sometimes my clients didn't agree with me about what was best for them, but I don't think I ever sacrificed the best interests of my client for money or for any other reason.